Hello and welcome to the Work of Thy Hands podcast, where we interview Christian creatives, conversing on the ways they have seen their creative projects as co creative efforts with Christ, times they have drawn inspiration from the physical creation, and their thoughts surrounding the nature of work as a creative. I'm your host, Allison Ramirez, and today I'm thrilled to be welcoming our next guest, Cody Smith. Cody is a dedicated public servant with a master's degree in criminal justice from the University of Mississippi. In his Christian fiction stories, he merges his real world experience and academic knowledge to craft compelling tales. In his debut series, The Graceville Detectives Club, Smith interweaves faith, mystery, and adventure, delivering not only an entertaining read, but also imparting valuable life lessons. With a passion for inspiring young readers, Smith's storytelling illuminates virtues of kindness, courage, and faith, fostering a love for reading and learning. Welcome, Cody.
Thank you, Allison. Thank you for having me today.
Thanks for being on the show. I love to start asking, how did you get into writing, especially since it sounds like you have a criminal justice background, which isn't always the same as being a writer. So tell me about your interest in writing and storytelling.
So actually, it's kind of funny. I This is more or less started off as a joke. It was not something that I was intending to do in these. It was just something that was kind of I just kind of started doing as more of a hobby type thing, and it just kind of grew from there and there. I have worked in law enforcement and public safety for law enforcement for 8 years, public safety for close to 10 years now. So it's just I've come from a family history. My granddad, my great granddad, my dad were all in law enforcement, so it's just kind of like a real life family blue blood story, if you want to say it. So it's just kind of something I grew up in, and then I just kind of melded over into how I write stories and stuff like that.
Okay, so do you have any background in writing when you were younger, growing up? Did you write any stories at all, or how did you actually get into the craft part of writing?
Um, I didn't. I made some stories kind of growing up, just kind of little folksy style stories, little like cardboard books and stuff like that. Mostly just to kind of teach lessons to my kids. I have two
Mhm.
kids. My daughter loves to read, so I try to make up some stuff for her just to kind of bring her along and just kind of teach her lessons. Because I think they learn more from learning from stories than just sitting down telling kids, do this, do
Mhm.
that. If you can present it to them in a story, then they kind of understand it a little bit better.
Right. Yeah, so that sounds like your inspiration was you have your kids and you wanted them to read fun and interesting and faithful stories.
Mhm.
That's great. With your writing, I had a chance to look at your website and your covers are really great, really engaging, and all the characters that you had on the front. So have
Yeah.
you pursued self-publishing, or sometimes people also like to call independently publishing or traditionally publishing your books?
I've looked at it. I actually was able TBN actually did this one. So they actually published it and was doing all that kind of stuff. So a lot of the pictures and the cover art and stuff, that's all TBN's work. I can't take any credit for that. That's their doing. But they actually published this one and promoted it out and all. So but no, really what it was is I grew up reading the Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew and those types of stories, and I kinda noticed with my daughter when we would go to find books and stuff, they don't have those types of stories anymore. They don't have the mystery kinda learning type of thing, and that's kind of where I started in crafting these books is like, well, I wanna make a new version of the Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys, but then to bring in some life lessons and fun and things like that so that they could, have some fun reading again instead of some of the other stuff that they see sometimes.
For sure. I loved also reading Nancy Drew. I think Boxcar Kids, Jack and Annie and the Magic Tree House. Those were some of my favorite reads growing up. There was even some books, I think it was Create Your Own Adventure, where you're
Mhm.
reading and it says, okay, now what do you want to do? And you if you want to go this way, you turn to this page of the book or turn to that page. So that was all a lot of fun. Sounds like your books are similar then to that.
Yeah, kinda. I weave in some stuff. It's a lot of life lessons, a lot of, but yeah, kind of taking kids and letting them kind of enjoy a mystery again, kind of not
Mhm.
knowing where it's going and kind of seeing, how faith can kind of guide you through kind of life mysteries and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's great. So you mentioned the group that's published the books. How did you get in contact with them, or what was that process like of having them work with you on your books?
So I was lucky enough, I was actually scrolling through Facebook and I saw an ad that was like a Facebook ad that popped up, said that they were looking for manuscripts. And like I said, I started off writing this book as kind of more or less just a hobby, almost like a joke type thing in the first place. I'm like, okay, well, I'll just send this manuscript off to TBN. Didn't expect to hear anything back, and I heard back from them, and they were interested, and it just kind of went from there.
Wow, that's great. Yeah. TBN, is that short for something? Is that their actual name or is it an abbreviation? I'm not
So
familiar with that.
it's I can't think of the actual name that they use, but it's Trilogy Publishing. But if you know like the things like the Bible Network, so it's got like the 700
Mm.
Club, and they have a big Christian, it's a big Christian following of
Oh,
individuals.
okay.
So they have a TV show, they have a TV channel that they've had for decades, I think. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and they have a publishing company, and they publish Christian, biographies, fictions, all sorts of different types of books. And they were having a thing where they were accepting manuscripts, and I tried it, just kind of seeing what would happen. And with God's grace, they took it and kind of ran with it from there.
That's like your typical like success story, right? So many authors they try to get picked up by these publishing groups and a lot of times, you get rejections or you never hear anything back or they say, "Oh, this has potential, but it's not a good fit for us, maybe try somewhere else." So that's great that this idea that you just had for your kids was actually of interest and something that you could get out to a larger readership through this publishing group.
Hmm. Yeah, it's this book is totally a God thing. This is not me. I take credit that he was willing to work with me through the book, but this is
Mhm.
completely his work that's out for people, and I truly believe. I
Yeah.
say that to everyone who asks me. This is God's message through this book. This has nothing really to do with me, but I'm just kind of the vessel he was using for it.
Mhm. And you mentioned so the Graceville Detectives Club series then. So you have more than one book out?
I am working on book two. This is the first one of the series, so I am currently working on book two. It's about a third of the way finished, so hopefully, sometime later, 2025, early 2026, it should be out.
Oh, great. And also going to be through the same publishing group.
That is the intention, yes.
And what's kind of the age group? Are you targeting elementary, middle school aged
So
kids?
the kids in the book are age 11, 11, 10,
Okay.
11-ish, which is actually the age of
Mhm.
my daughter. So it's kind of geared towards that preteen to teenage group. But I've
Mhm.
had anyone from 6 years old to 75 years old read the book, and they thought it was fun and engaging and stuff. So it's really a book for anyone, but it's more geared towards that kind of preteen to middle school to early high school age.
Is there any like illustrations in the book or is it just the
No,
words?
it's just your normal chapter book. I
Okay.
can put words on paper, but drawing is not my forte.
Yeah, same here. From the time that you submitted your book to the time that it was published, what did that process look like? Did you work with several editors in the company or a cover designer or how did
So
that?
they gave me to what they call like basically a project manager, and she was kind of like my liaison that I worked with throughout the entire process. And through that, I believe I had three rounds of edits. I had a couple of different cover arts I could look for, um, formatting, all that kind of stuff. She was kind of my liaison. They worked all that stuff on their end, and they just brought the stuff to me and said, "Hey, what do you think of it? These are the changes you need to make." That all that kind of stuff. And then we just kind of went back and forth. I think there's three rounds of edits, two cover art looks, and a couple other different things. But they take really good care of you going through them, and they are one of the best companies to work with that I've known.
Yeah, and hopefully too, they could help with marketing and promoting the books as well. Because I know that's always a struggle for writers is they get the book out there and then they're like, now what do I do?
Yeah, they do. They promote it. They have their own website that they promote it on, and they have, I think, social media following of I want to say 2.5 million or some odd people. So they'll
Okay.
try to promote it on their Facebook, their Instagram, their all that kind of good stuff. So they help out some, but a lot of it you kind of have to go out there and do on your own. It's still more or less independent publishing, but they help out where they
Mhm.
can.
Right, right. Yeah, and I think nowadays too, the author's expected to do quite a lot of promoting. I think in the past, the traditional publisher did it all, and now it's more like teamwork where they'll help you, and then we expect you to be getting the word out as well.
Exactly, exactly, yeah.
Great. Well, that's great to hear about. The first big question I like to ask guests is, how does your faith inspire your approach to your creative work, or do you see your work being a co-creative effort with Christ in your writing?
Yeah, like I said, I take no credit for this story coming out there. This is totally God's work. I tend it to, the writers in the Bible being the inspired word of God, but yeah, he worked through people to kind of put the Bible out there and all. So I tended to that, not saying that my work is anywhere near that that level of stuff, but it's working with him to kind of get his message out that he wants people to understand, and that's an honor and a privilege that I had the opportunity to do this. Uh, my wife makes fun of me at times. She said I was voted most likely to read a book, and here I am writing one. And uh, like I said, it this was just something that kind of got laid on my heart, is and I kind of thought of it as a joke, more or less, just to see what could happen. And you know, like I said, with God's grace, it just kind of blossomed and came into what it is now, and it's kind of building on from there.
Yeah, I love how God can surprise us, something that you didn't even expect it was going to get to this point with your book, and now look where it's at. And it just goes to show that we have our ideas and our plans, but sometimes the unexpected can happen, and that can be to our benefit and to others' benefit. So, what about the physical creation? Because you're writing like, your own creation of a book, but do you find inspiration from nature at all, or just God's, great earth and like the physical creation?
Yeah, I mean, I think Earth in of itself, just living in the natural world, is just a mystery, and you
Mhm.
kind of have to kind of find your way through in situations you kind of get put in of how did the red oak trees get so large, or how did the ocean get so how did the land come through? It's all a mystery, and you know you see all that kind of stuff, and you wonder, well, how did something that a tree that big come from a seed this small, and just those types of things that you just kind of want to learn and just kind of develop and keep learning and keep growing. So the mysteries of earth, the mysteries that we get to see, is just kind of like what led me to saying, well, let's do a mystery novel. Let's kind of see the surprise and the anticipation that of kind of building something up and then revealing how it happened or why it happened and things like that.
Yeah, that's actually a good connection I didn't think about. But yeah, you're writing detective mystery story, and that's the world in a sense is kind of a mystery in a lot of ways. You hear that, scientists are still uncovering so many things about different animals or species that didn't know they existed, and like how certain creation trees can thrive in these certain elements. Like, I'm working on a fiction series of my own, a trilogy that's for young adults. And I have a scene in there where I learned about, I think they're called mangrove trees, but they like grow out of the water. Like they root themselves in the sea. And so there's not really any dirt or anything. And it's like, how does that happen? How do they, survive and thrive in that kind of environment? Because my story is set on an island, so there's a
Right.
lot of water, obviously. But yeah, it's just so fascinating that we live in this earth that is full of beauty and also a mystery that we get a chance to discover. And that's also in your stories, it sounds like too.
Yeah, and also, I mean, being that it's a mystery book, there's some red herrings in there. Not gonna lie about that, but it kind of also goes to, I'm so sure that this is what's going on, and then God kind of laughs and says, "Haha, no, it's over. This is what it was really doing the entire time." So it's just it kind of all that kind of stuff. Kind of just I try to bring into my book and stuff like that.
Yeah. Right, right. And then you're working on book 2. How many books do you think you're gonna have in total?
I honestly don't know. I didn't think there would be one, so
Yeah.
now there's getting ready for two. So I'm working on. I'm really trying to work on three books at one time, which is very difficult. I've come to learn. Um, but I'm working on book two in this series, and then I have a couple of other books, more of adult style books that I'm going to try to work on and kind of bridge out a little bit, see how that
Okay.
goes.
Oh, so you're gonna have your middle grade detective books, and then you're working on some books for adults as well.
I'm gonna try to. I'm working on one now. Like I said, I work for the state, and when in the job that I do, I'm working with people who are in addiction and stuff, trying to help them overcome addiction and stuff. So I kind of want to build some biblical principles, but also kind of guide some light into individuals of how to help people and kind of draw them out of the darkness of stuff and bring them to the light. So I'm hoping to get a kind of book like that brought out maybe in the next year or so. We'll see how that goes.
Wow. Yeah. I'm sure that we always need more books on books that, and especially if that's your professional experience, I'm sure you have a lot of good expertise that you can give that can be helpful. So, well, good. I also like to ask, how do you see your relationship with work in the sense of the work you're doing with your books and your day job as well? Do you see any connection there, or how do you balance your varying work responsibilities in being a creative in your writing?
I mean, I think that, work for us, for creatives and work in general, kind of goes beyond just like your effort and your productivity and what you do. It's more of like a calling.
Mhm,
I mean, we see, especially in Genesis, God himself calls himself a creator. Um,
mhm.
and, if we kind of look on that, it's not just about the output of what we're doing, it's about our purpose, creating, communicating the truth, showing the beauty of the world, showing how people can kind of build on themselves and kind of grow, not just as persons, but in their relationship and things like that.
I really like that because, yeah, I think a lot of times work can just seem like something that we just have to do, right? Like you have to have a job, you have to make a living, this and that, support your family, but seeing it as like a purpose that we've
Hmm.
been given, something that is actually going to be not just like financially helping us, for example, but spiritually or helping others as well through what we do. Because I know for me, I have worked a lot of different jobs and teaching or office admin work or writing, editing, and kind of through it all, I've always been wrestling with what do I feel like God is calling me to in my work? Like,
Yeah,
how does He want me to use my gifts and my talents, to where it doesn't just feel like you don't want to get up in the morning and go to work, like you're actually feeling like you're making a difference and enjoying your work to some degree. Obviously, work isn't always enjoyable, but to
right.
the degree that you can. And I think that especially you're right with like the first book of the Bible in Genesis talks about God is a creator and a worker, right? And Adam and Eve are working in the garden, so it's work is something that I think can draw us closer to God
Right.
as well.
And seeing work is more like a stewardship. I mean, we
Mhm.
all have gifts, we all have talents. I mean, and they're all really meant to inspire others to God. So it's not, it's about using those talents and using those gifts that we have just to kind of help other people. And that kind of transforms, the way you look at work and things like that. If you look at it as more of your own, I guess, personal ministry, I guess, so to speak. So that's kind of where I see it kind of going in there.
Well, with your day job, do you do most of your writing on the weekends or in the evening, or what with your best creative time?
Usually in the evening after my kids go to bed, when I have like a few minutes to myself, I'll try to sit down and jot a few notes. On the weekend, if I get a day off, but with two very active children in sports and activities and stuff like that, I don't get too many days off. It's usually
Yeah.
taking into some practice or another. So I keep, try to keep little notes to myself or keep a Google Doc going. So if I come up with an idea, I'll kind of jot it down and just kind of try to build on it when I can and when I get extra time.
Sure. Yeah, I also been recently asking guests, what's like your advice for other people that are it could be writers like yourself or just people that are really wanting to go into the creative endeavor. Like what would be your advice?
Just do it. Just sit down and discern it, pray about it, and just sit down and just start writing or start creating something, whether it's art or, music or a podcast or anything like that. Just sit down and start doing it. I mean, it's not something that you're going to get right. I know my first edits, I thought I was back in grade school with as many red marks that was on my paper, but it was a start. And so, you just start doing it because God, if this is what you're meant to do and this is what God wants you to do, He's gonna give you the ability to get through it. He's gonna give you the ideas. He's gonna give you the time and the talents and the guests if you want, or the resources you need. He's gonna be able to provide that option for you. It's gonna be there. And so just, it's scary. It's hard to walk out on that limb, but you know, not everything in life's going to be easy. A lot of, being in a Christian life is struggle. So it's figuring out, okay, what does God want me to do? Where does He want me to go? And just trusting that He's going to kind of get you through that process.
Yeah, I like that because I think too the creative work is so important to our world. Like people are really searching for truth, and there's a lot of things out there in the media or, in TV shows or even books that perhaps don't really have that inspiring or faith-filled messages. So I think that being a creative, whether it's writing or music or acting or baking or photography, like I think those are all really important ways where we can shine a light, you know, into the world. So yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I also like to ask, this is kind of a fun question. Do you have a favorite Bible verse or prayer or song or person who has really inspired you in your writing as a creative?
Yeah, actually, I do. There's a song that I came across. I don't remember when it came out, but it's called "Nobody" by Casting Crowns. I don't know if you've got to hear it or heard of it
Oh,
before.
I'm very familiar with Casting Crowns, but I don't know if I particularly listened to that song.
But yeah, and I'll tell you just kind of like the first verse is, why you ever chose me is will always be a mystery to me. All my life I've been told I was at the end of the line with all the other not quites, with all the never get rights, but it turns out those were the ones you were looking for all the time. And then it kinda goes on into the, chorus of the song that, Moses had stage fright, David brought a rock to a sword fight, you picked 12 outsiders nobody would have chosen, and you changed the world. And the moral of it is that everybody had a purpose, so when the devil starts talking to you saying, "Who do you think you are?" I'm just a nobody trying to tell everybody about Jesus. And it's just a beautiful song that kinda, when you're down on yourself and you see, all the heroes of the Bible had an Achilles heel. They all had something that, nobody would have picked them to do it. No one would have, expected that from them. So, they were just a nobody that got chosen and kind of went through and changed the world and changed, society for the better.
As you were reading the lyrics, I think I have listened to that song before because that sounds familiar. Yeah, and that's so true because I think a lot of times we can feel like we are afraid to do creative work because we're like, oh, it's not going to be good enough, or it's going to this or that. There's so many people that could be doing this better than me, different excuses or things we might tell ourselves. But it's actually the people that you would least expect or the people that you don't think, would be doing something creative, perhaps actually are, and that God is actually working through them and helping them along the journey. So,
Yeah, that was one that I came across it when I was getting started, and I had those same things of, I'm never going to be able to write this down. I have terrible spelling. I'm terrible at no one's going to want to read this. It's just a silly story and it's going to sit in a drawer somewhere and all of that. But, you know, you have to get over it. You just have to see what happens. And, when God opens a door, you have to be willing to walk through it. And I think that's the biggest step is just trusting God and knowing that, He has a plan and a purpose for your life and you can't fight it. Um,
right, we just got to surrender to it. Yeah, and yeah, do our part, right? There was a quote, I don't know who said the quote, it might have been Mother Teresa, but it's something like, we're like a pen in the hand of God or something like that. Like,
mhm.
he's basically, we're there as an instrument to make him known to the world, right? And
Right.
he's going
Yeah,
to use us.
we are God's hands, we are His feet, we are His eyes, we are His ears here on earth. So, you know, our lives are meant to personify Him and to bring glory to Him and to ultimately lead to our heavenly entrance and to help as many other people get there as we possibly can.
Right, right. So true. Well, with those words, I'm going to let our listeners know that if you'd like to stay connected with Cody and his work, especially if you have someone who's like that middle grade audience who might enjoy detective books, feel free to check the show notes below with links to his professional email, website, and Instagram. Cody, thanks so much for the great conversation today and joining me on the Work of Thy Hands podcast. I always like to close out with a prayer that is actually a prayer for people who are creatives, which is super fun. So, this is a nice prayer that we can end with today. So, Creator of the universe, how infinite and astonishing are your worlds. O divine imagination, you created a crater when you imagined me into existence. Breathe breath into so much dust. Let me lament for forgetting daily to rise up out of the clay. Free me from the deceit of the mundane and from the lure of comfort, which dulls all my given edges. Most of all, light of my life, forgive my blindness, open all my eyes, salt me with newness and dreams. Fire my soul with your inventive flame. Let me be committed to the world by it and find in it the deepest joy. Universal creativity flow through me, faith to see things not yet seen, hope to overflow broken cisterns, and love to free me forever. Flow, O river, from the holy temple through my mind to my hand, infuse my work with spirit to feed hungry souls. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.